The New York Rangers are making more moves as we have a pretty significant injury update and some interesting comments from Coach Peter Laviolette. And the Rangers need a spark, so it may be time for a reunion of sorts. We're going to break it all down in this episode of Rangers Digest. But before we do, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 70% of you who watch our videos are not actually subscribed to the channel. So if you want to do yourself a favor, it's free. Hit that subscribe button and you get to stay up to date with everything New York Rangers. And again, quick shout out to everyone who is subscribed. Your support has been unbelievable. And thank you for joining us on the ride here on Rangers Digest, where you get everything New York Rangers. And now into the first bit of news today. Again, the Rangers are making some interesting moves. They called up Victor Mancini before their game against the Edmonton Oilers, which was a disappointing result, as we all know. And I will get to that later in the video. We have some interesting comments from Laviolette as well. But to focus on the injury, we have some bad news. It doesn't sound like it's too serious, but Zach Jones was held out of the game, and obviously that's why Mancini was called up and played in favor of somebody else as well, which I thought was interesting. And Laviolette had some clarity on that. And Filip Chytil will come on at the end of the skate yesterday, which, again, he is making his way back from injury, so that is good news. Obviously, it wasn't as significant or serious as we thought at the time. So again, good news. But the New York Rangers, including Victor Mancini, were on the ice for morning skate yesterday, but Zach Jones was not, obviously injured day to day. So hopefully he is back soon. That would be best case scenario, and hoping for a speedy recovery with whatever he's dealing with, excuse me, and to get back into the lineup in pretty short order, because he has been fantastic so far this year. He has been brilliant, and I was looking for a big season from Zach Jones based on what he did last year. And coming into the season, it was a little bit disappointing to start the year, but he has been great. I would not take him out of the lineup at this point. He has been a breath of fresh air. Even last year, he was great. And now, obviously, with his absence, Victor Mancini was called up. I'm a big fan of this move because Victor Mancini has been playing great, not only in the NHL for a youngster, but in the AHL as well. He's been putting together some pretty good games, I think. And Peter Laviolette, had the choice of putting him and obviously Chad Ruhwedel into the lineup. But obviously, I don't think you call up Victor Mancini to scratch him. I think you're playing Victor Mancini at this point, and his decision was pretty simple. He said he was here. He didn't do anything to lose that spot. We just didn't want him sitting here not playing games, to keep him going and developing. He went back down to play games. Now he's back. Rudy is a good defenseman for us. He's played well. Excuse me. He's played well, but the way it came out of camp, we were going with Vic at the time, and I was upfront and honest with him, and if I could play 7, I would, but we can't. And obviously I would not want the New York Rangers to go 11-7. That would not be good. We see a lot of other teams doing it in the league, even the Edmonton Oilers, who they played last night, but I wouldn't do that if I was the Rangers. I don't think their lineup lends to that, but we just didn't want him sitting there doing nothing. So we sent him down to play games until we needed him again. And I think that makes perfect sense. And they needed him last night. And unfortunately, it did not go the way that all Rangers fans would have liked. But before we get into Rempe, I did want to touch on the game last night for a second. I mean, a very disappointing 6-2 loss against the Edmonton Oilers, which Edmonton has a lot of firepower. If you look at Connor McDavid, if you look at Leon Draisaitl, which is basically the entire team, they have a very potent offense, and you have to account for that. And I feel like the Rangers really weren't in that game again. Even the other night against Calgary, they were really only in that game for the 2 goals that they scored back to back within seconds of each other. So again, this is disappointing. You could chalk it up to early season struggles, whatever you want, maybe some injury trouble, which I wouldn't even chalk it up to that. But I think that it's something that they have to get on top of. Allowing this many shots, which again, last night against Edmonton, allowing far too many shots, allowing this many shots. And again, I don't think it's just on the defense. I think it's team defense. This involves the forwards as well, because there's times Mika Zibanejad is getting caught defensively, right? A lot of the centers, everyone has to play as a unit. They're not doing that right now. They have to figure this out, because this is not a sustainable way to play. You cannot hang your goaltender Igor Shesterkin and Jonathan Quick out to dry like this every night. They're the reason that you have a couple more wins than you should, I think, at this point. So the goaltending has been fantastic. No notes for me on that, but the rest of the team defense, the buy-in, it's not there. I'm not sure if it's a coaching thing. I'm sure a lot of you will have a civil conversation in the comments about that. I don't know if it's a coaching thing or the personnel itself, but they have to get on top of this now in November, because if you allow this to bleed past Thanksgiving into December, into January, this is a real problem heading into the playoffs, because they have to get ahead of this. You cannot give out give up that many shots in a game consistently. It's bad. It's really bad. Igor Shesterkin cannot have that workload. He's not going to be his normal self, especially when you get to the playoffs. So you have to get on top of that. They're still in a good spot, but they have to really work on that. It has not been great. And one thing I wanted to touch on as well is maybe it's time for a reunion with Matt Rempe, perhaps, because I was looking at the time on ice the last couple of games, and Adam Edstrom, and I love his game and what he's done to make the team at a training camp, and obviously even dating back to last season, but he was played the least out of anyone, and by a pretty significant amount, about like 3 minutes less, give or take, right? But that's pretty significant to me, especially with other line mates. I thought he was going to play more time on the special teams as well. He has not been doing that, so again, I wonder if you take a look at that. I think he has great use, but I wonder if you just change something up. What if you bring Matt Rempe back up from the Hartford Wolfpack? The Rangers need to recall Rempe and play him like 10 to 12 minutes a game. It just has to be done. The team is playing like it's a no-check league. And I think, a lot of people suggest, and I think that they're right, in that the top guys have to play more physical. I totally agree. I think guys like Kreider, like Zibanejad, they have to play more physical. If they don't, you will not find success when it matters. But in saying that, Edstrom has a use. I still think he does. And I think that, he will play in the league again. But I think it's time that the Rangers and Chris Drury give a real look at Matt Rempe again in the NHL. This is a guy who can kind of start running around and hitting guys, right? And once one guy's doing it, the crowd's into it at MSG. Other guys might feed into it and might start playing the same with the same energy. Will Cooley's doing it, but nobody's matching him. They need another guy. They need an energy guy like Matt Rempe to get in there, start throwing the body around, and to play maybe not significant minutes, but maybe 8 to 10 minutes or something like that. I think it's time for a reunion with Matt Rempe. And he's also gaining confidence down there in Hartford. He's making some plays, right? Obviously, don't look at his stats, right? Like, he's not a guy who's going to put up crazy numbers or anything like that. I wouldn't even look at his plus minus. I don't put too much into plus minus either. But he has been gaining some confidence. He plays with that physical edge. They need a guy like this, and I think he's hungry. I think if he was to get back into the Rangers lineup, he would try and make a difference, at least physically. So I think they need a spark. They need some energy. I think it's time for a reunion with Matt Rempe, and this is from Blue Shirt Bulletin as well. It may be time for a Rempe reunion. His Hartford time hasn't been perfect, far from it, that's for sure, but the Rangers lineup has become stale. It's become stale, and they need an X factor, and maybe he's not an X factor in the way that he's going to score a goal, and maybe he might take a penalty, but he could shift a game. He can, with the way that he plays. He can add that energy, and it flows through the rest of the team. So they need something to just wake up, and I think it might be time for a reunion with Matt Rempe. But let me know what you think about Zach Jones' injury. Hopefully he's back in the lineup pretty soon, because he's a pretty significant part of this defense core right now. Victor Mancini getting back in the lineup. Obviously, a very disappointing loss to the Edmonton Oilers again. Not to the Oilers again, but another disappointing loss. And they're giving up far too many shots. They have to lock in. And I think a guy that could bring, a spark and some energy like Matt Rempe coming back into the lineup because he's hungry might be able to help this Rangers team, especially, after the road trip. If they were to get him back at MSG, I think that could provide some energy. But let me know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.